Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me the Count of Monte Cristo, who his real name is Aaron Dowen, and his co-owner of Catalyst Comics Studios, Matt Sotello. So, welcome to the show.
I'm back.
Hey,
Y'all thought I was done. I'm back.
God.
Guys, I just got off of work. You got to forgive everything that was about to happen.
So obviously, me and Aaron spoke before, and this is the first time I'm speaking with Matt. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Aaron is now part of a exclusive club of a few guests. It's a 2-time club, and Tyrone is part of that club as well. So you're in good company right there. And obviously, we spoke the last time extensively about Catalyst Comic Studios, and I know that you have a Kickstarter going on, One Last Job. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about what is Catalyst Comic Studios, because some people might not have caught that interview, and I think it's the best place to start.
Let's hear Matt's answer for this.
It's everything you want. Comic books. We've started doing a little bit of everything. I feel like that's our problem. Me and Aaron we're just all over the place. We started out with just me and him saying, hey, let's make a comic book. That was it. Then we said, hey, let's start a company. Why would we sell an IP? Let's just start our own company, make some comic books. And then everything snowballed from there when we started producing. And then it turned into video production because we needed those for Kickstarters, and then we needed advertising. So we started making Kickstarter of our own Kickstarter rewards. So t-shirt design, all that kind of stuff. So how it kind of started, and that's what it's kind of grown into, and that's where we're pushing it. So
obviously there's a lot of stuff, and so let's just start with the comic book stuff first, because I think that's what people know the most of. And obviously I think the first one was Paradigm, which is a superhero oriented book. Obviously it's set in a particular universe. And so how did that idea even come about? Because I know that we spoke about that before, but I am curious how that all came about and what that even was like. Because obviously you kind of just threw, I guess, to put it nicely, and I know how it's going to sound bad, but spaghetti at the wall to some degree. Sometimes it sticks.
Yeah, see, it doesn't sound bad to us because that's our entire philosophy of production is throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. But that was Matt's first book for illustration, and it was the first comic book script I wrote. We both live in a very close proximity, and we met through a mutual friend who has a history working in Marvel and DC and Valiant and the big guys. And we kind of met through him going to an art exhibit, which is hilarious because Matt and I don't make sense in an art exhibit. But anyway, mostly just for Matt to look at a wall and be like, I could have done better than that.
Is that pointillism? Really? No.
Anyway.
No, pass.
Anyway, so basically it came down to I had started Catalyst Comics with, at the time, a close friend of mine, and we were both closet writing superhero stories, and then we realized, oh man, this would be cool to actually try to build something off of it. And so again, Paradigm's the first one I wrote. But once we kind of started looking for an artist, we realized finding an artist is not as easy as you think. Matt had kind of come into the picture around that time. And so the first book that he was actually going to do, we hired him to do a crossover comic between my character and my friend's character. A bunch of stuff happened with my friend, and he kind of just disappeared off the face of the earth. And Matt and I had been getting to know each other because we were talking a lot about the project. And once that happened, I was kind of like, well, what the heck do I do now? And Matt was just like, well, why don't you just do your solo series? And so I kind of did that, started going with that. And as we progressed, Matt started doing other things for slides and, posters and all that kind of stuff. And eventually I'd asked my wife one day, I was like, I've really been thinking about asking Matt to be the co-owner. What do you think? And she was like, oh yeah, absolutely. She was like, he's one of the only friends you've ever had that I actually don't mind. And so I asked him, and
test.
Yeah. So I asked him, and he came on board, and then we started cranking and put Paradigm out. We did Kickstarter at the end of 2018, but we published in March. So we're coming up close on our 2-year publishing anniversary, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of how it all came together.
So to even bring Matt in, because obviously you brought up a really interesting point, and I've heard stories about this, and I'm sure both of you have heard stories where an artist, you go out, find an artist, and then they rob you blind, they don't deliver, or they deliver shabby work, or that their work is taking too long, and a bunch of stuff happens. And so you said, obviously, it was hard to find an artist. And so what was it like having an artist, I guess, right next to you this entire time? And then even just bring that in, because obviously Matt, and it's very different because most people on Kickstarter don't actually see their artist ever, or they might see their artist at a con, but they don't see their artist or hire their artist or know their artist in person, which makes a big difference in connection and writing and things like that. And even in DC and Marvel in many ways, that also is the fact, and in Image as well, where a lot of people don't even know their artists. And obviously I've interviewed people from Zenescope, and there have been times where this is the first time they've ever interviewed an artist and actually had like a face-to-face video with their artist. And it's a crazy concept to me. So I am super, super interested in that relationship, because obviously the two of you have been working together and you're co-owners together. So It's super interesting.
Yeah. Let's.
Hey, Joe.
I'm not a normal artist. I'll put it to you like that, because, well, I mean, we start getting onto like this weird soapbox, kind of like, not a soapbox, but like there's a weird thing with artists that I just don't understand, because you're so willing to spend money and to go to like art school and learn and do all this stuff. Well, I just don't understand the difference between when a writer comes to you and says, "Hey, let's make something together," and would you want to come in and do a project? And then all of a sudden the artist goes, yeah, but it's like $300 a page, and all this stuff I learned from whatever, and yeah, you have to treat me with this utmost respect, even though I'm not treating you with that respect, even though we're both trying to get into it. And I wasn't like that. I told Aaron, I said, listen, this is my first book, so as long as you give me time and let me learn off of this, all I'm doing is building a portfolio. So as long as you're willing to work with me and help me out, this is only helping me push myself, because I feel that the best thing for an artist to do is to have a project, because 90% of the time you're just talking about having a project, or sitting around drawing anatomy for no reason when you're not putting it into actual practice. But anyway, put that aside. So when Aaron came to me, and I had nothing, I'd never done sequential storytelling, anything like that. He was like, listen, this is my first book. He was having a hard time finding an artist, because artists were like, you're a new writer, and this kind of stuff. So it seemed like he was having trouble, and I was the first one to say, yeah, let me read it and let me try it. And me trusting him and him trusting me, I think that's what made it work so well, is the fact that he was like, listen, this is my first thing, if you need to change something. And I'm like, I don't even know what I would change. And so I've evolved and grown that way. So coming as an artist,
I think it had a lot to do with our mindsets on all this stuff. Like Matt was kind of alluding to with the art school thing, is it does put this thing in your mind of, when I graduate with that degree, I ask for 300 or whatever a page. Look, it was my first book, and I was just trying. Again, we just talked about it earlier, throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. There's no way I'm about to hire somebody for 300 a page. Matt and I did negotiate a page per price. I still have that contract somewhere. But what ended up happening is, once he came on as the co-owner, he was like, I would rather just use that money and try to build more of the company. And so ever since then, we've been cranking. And so people feel some kind of way when we say that kind of stuff, because they're like, oh man, so you got an artist to do the work for free? I was like, well, we try to balance this stuff out. There's things that Matt doesn't do.
Yeah, but I got
do.
a writer to create a whole universe for me to draw for free. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same.
Let's talk about this, because this is super interesting, because I've spoken to people who basically they own their work and they basically build it on spec. And it almost seems part of that. But also there are some projects that people have taken and said, hey, in my Kickstarter, I built in a page rate for myself as the writer because I'm unsure how this book is going to do. And so it seems that this is what that is to some degree, is that on certain projects, you have a page rate built in because this project might be slightly more risky, for lack of a better word. And on others, you're just taking straight equity because you're a co-owner. And so that's what it seems like on certain projects and certain elements. And so that's super interesting, because obviously anytime money goes out and you're hiring an artist, whether that's for a variant or anything, that obviously means that that can't be used for something else for the company or that book. And it is a balancing act, because I'll give a great example. I pay for Facebook ads to promote my business. Every time I spend $30 on Facebook ads, that means that that's taking away from somewhere else from the business, but I'm anticipating that it's worth more.
Right.
And then sometimes I won't pay for Facebook ads for something because I think I can get it the same rate of result just by doing the right social media and spending 3 hours. And so it's a balancing act. And so I think that that's a really good explanation of how that is all working. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you're balancing a company.
Right. It's a little bit different. And for that exact reason of, it's a company that we decided to actually put forth the effort to build. And so we both still work full-time jobs, and we both went into it understanding, like, let's work towards something that can get us to where we can both take a part-time position and then, work on this full-time. And ever since then, it's, Matt and I have never really had a fight about anything for the most part, but especially about like the finances and getting the company rolling and who we wanted to hire. And it's because I do trust him, especially when as find artists for some of these other projects like Tilt and One Last Job. He gets first dibs on any script I put out. That's just an unwritten rule. He gets first dibs. And if he thinks somebody else would be a better fit, then, he says it. Or if he thinks it's not a story that he's interested, but he can see the marketability of it. Or if I just, continuously push that story down his throat, like, we got to put this one out. Then eventually we cave. But yeah, I mean, so far it's been just a matter of what projects can we put out that can start building some equity in the business. And that's all we've been doing ever since then. And it's only been 2 years, but we're in a much better place now than we were when we started.
Yeah. Cause you got to think, when we first started, we decided how long have we been doing this? Like 2 years, right?
Yep.
Something like that almost. So we went from, let's just see if we can even make a comic, that very first comic, to let's see if we can figure out how Kickstarter works. Let's figure out this. Then we've already gotten to the point of, okay, now that the superhero universe has started, we're already starting to bring in offshoot stories and, under the imprint and stuff like that. So that's, fantastic for us. That's what, it goes back to, like, I know Aaron just wants to see his stories come to life. And for me, drawing is the same way. Like it goes from just drawing in a room, just getting excited to draw a figure, to, oh man, I'm actually telling a story, and this is amazing. And regardless if we ever got this far, we would still be doing that, whether it was with your friends for free or whatever. Like, if you're passionate about it, you're going to keep doing it regardless. It doesn't matter. So, and I think that's the big difference, as soon as, to go back to the whole artist thing and, how we want to keep putting money into the business, like, if you're passionate about it, you're going to keep doing it regardless. But yeah, if it's a full-time job, I understand, you have to ask for money and make a living, but
Yeah, and even to go further, because obviously you guys got the superhero stuff, but I think it's interesting, and that's not what makes me excited. I think that your imprint, which is Uprising, is way more fascinating. And we spoke about Tilt and extensively, and so we're avoiding Tilt for a reason. There's a lot of stuff going on. I think the third one just wrapped up, and people have gotten it for the most part into their hands and have checked it out. And a lot of stuff happens at the end of issue 3, and I'm not going to ruin too much if you haven't picked it up. It goes dark, I think is a nice way to put it. Very efficiently. But something that is fascinating to me is Welcome to Everville. Obviously, Matt, you got the shirt on, and so you worked on that one too.
That was all me, all the art chores.
And so that was super interesting. It's an interesting take on Van Helsing. I'm a big fan of the entire Van Helsing position, both the way Zenescope's done it, the literature before that, obviously the TV show, who Ralph Tedesco, who was one of my favorite people in the world, was on my show, and we spoke about that for like 45 minutes, and it was amazing. Props to Ralph out there if he's seeing this. But anyhow, like, where did that idea come from, and what was that like drawing that? Because that is way outside of superheroes, and very much, it's kind of going straight and making a massive left turn, and it goes in a very different direction very quickly than I think people anticipated to go.
Yeah. Matt, you can say something first if you want.
Well, I mean, I don't know how. I don't really like Aaron's always got stories going on. So he's like, dude, I've got, like we used to just like on the weekends, we used to just like meet up, go get some Mexican food and sit and talk about what we're doing with the company, where we want to go. And, we were talking about Kickstarters and, like superhero stuff is hard to sell sometimes, not everybody's into it. Just like you said, it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's cool. We get it. We don't mind.
Like competitive in many ways.
It's very competitive. But so is any other genre. If you look at like Kickstarter, like it's some people just seem like they just want to do the weirdest book possible just because it's going to grab somebody's attention. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not a jab at anybody, but it's just kind of like I'm gonna throw all the spaghetti on the walls. And I know something's going to stick because it's just so weird. Like I've covered all the walls with spaghetti. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get somebody's attention. But yeah, superheroes are very more mainstream. It's very competitive like that. So Aaron, we would sit and talk and Aaron would say, okay, well, I got a horror book. You want to draw monsters? I'm like, yes, I want to draw monsters, obviously. So, and a lot of times it's, he'll give me a script and kind of go, I'll start doing character designs and then we'll be like, okay, yeah, I would definitely draw this book, or, let me read what you've got or your pitch for it and kind of go from there. But yeah, that being the second.
Because obviously as you're drawing things, sometimes, and I'm sure Aaron, that this is true, and correct me if I'm wrong, well, sometimes somebody writes something and it's just not physically able to be drawn, or you see it differently and you see little things that can make the book better. And so how is that as an artist? Because obviously, this is not, this is your second, third, fourth book at this point. And so you worked on or had interjections into. And so what is that like for you as an artist growing into that position, Matt? Because that's really interesting, because artists definitely help. Because sometimes, it's not just another person looking at the book. It's also somebody saying, hey, I know how this is visually going to look. I understand that, even character or even coloring a book can make a huge difference, where sometimes a certain purple, and a writer might want a certain purple, and that purple doesn't look good in the scene, for instance, and it does make a difference. Same thing with shading and some other stuff can make a massive difference. So what is that like for you when you see little things or even big things sometimes, because things happen. I mean, look at Walking Dead. There are scenes where Rick has both hands in the later issues, and it legitimately wasn't caught until later on. And there's a big discussion about that where Robert Kirkman's like, because he thought it was sort of funny, but at the same time, things sometimes like that happen. So what is that like for you?
Well, so Everville, I did all of Paradigm, color, pencils, inks, coloring. For a first book, trying to learn that, it took me so long. And Everville, I did the same thing. That was my second book. And so obviously I tried to do my best from learning from the first one. And when Aaron sent me, Aaron's trusts me enough to where he's like, he knows I'm learning, but I'm also, he knows I'll sit there and just Google stuff and look at other books and try and figure out what I could do better, and understanding pacing of a story, and how, like, I'll read through a story and, you know, like with the script, and I'll be like, hey, I'm going to add a whole nother page, or, hey, I'm about to add a couple panels here because it's going to help draw this scene out a little bit more. And I feel like Everville, I really feel like I added certain things that might not have been in the script. Paradigm, I was very by the book, like, okay, this is Aaron's book, I've got to do it exactly how he wants because I want to be a good artist like that. And then once I realized, okay, the second book, I could see where I could add something and make it a little better, or push, you know, like I said, the pacing and stuff like that. So it's all such a learning experience. And, you know, I'm working on Paradigm 2 right now. So that is you know, I feel like I'm just progressing, and I can see it, and I feel better about how the stories are going. It's a lot of work. It's, you know, like, doing sequential art is insanely difficult to, you know, like you said, if there's something that, hey, I want a monster ripping off the Statue of Liberty's head, or, you know, like King Kong's coming out of the, you know, like the amount, it's easy to write that stuff, but then to draw it is a whole nother, you know, thing of how much time is this going to take me. but
and then what was it like also for you just to step in and say, hey, you know, I now feel comfortable enough? Because I think you just said it with Paradigm is a really good example of this, where you followed it to the script, and now with Everville, you seem to have a little bit more comfort levels. And hey, you know, I think that we need 2 more scenes here. And then you just say to Aaron, hey, you know, can I just add these 2 scenes in here? And I know it messes up some stuff a little bit, but it's not ultra messing up the book, because you're not changing the overall story, but you understand as an artist that, hey, you know, maybe we need another 2 scenes here to get the point across versus, you know.
The only thing that Matt changed in Everville, and it was a few different times, anything that he brought to the table to change was to help with the pacing of the story, and to either slow down or speed up a section or give it room to breathe. But it's an interesting project because, you know, you read through the book, and before you hit the last page, the pacing is really smooth, and you know, it's set within the same kind of day. And that's the entire reason why I was like, now that we got that established 26 pages in, when they flip to 27, let's F them up and jump 4 years. And it was just because anyone that reads my stuff knows at some point there's a twist, and it's just how I like to write stuff. At some point, something's going to be in there that's going to throw you off. And that maybe was teased earlier. But yeah, so anything he brought was very pace driven.
Yeah, it might be like adding a panel or something like that. And then also, like, when we went through it all with dialogue, you know, like, I would obviously see where, you know, this panel had this, or like if I see there's so much dialogue in one, and I feel like I can kind of break it up enough to where I'm like, hey, Aaron, if he says this in this panel, and we have a blank panel to let it breathe and kind of just mull over, and then the last panel split that word balloon up that we were going to do and kind of give it more weight and emphasis on it. And it really, you know, gives it a different feeling to how that's paced, you know? So we walk through that book like 3 or 4 times at the end, and we're going through edits, and we're like, this is actually pretty good. Like, I think it's turned out pretty well for, you know,
I think you just reminded me of one of my favorite conversations that Matt and I have ever had. And it was when we were going through editing Welcome to Everville, and we'd been through it 3-4 times. We're like, you know, it's good. It's solid. And then one day I was like, Matt, pull it up on your tablet and read it on your tablet. And so like 30-45 minutes later, Matt messages me. He's like, dude, he was like, it reads so much better on a tablet. Yeah. I was like, I know, man, rather than just flipping through screen pages.
Right. So to even go off of that, because you mentioned something about pacing, and one of the things about comics that's the most interesting part of comics in my mind is that the reader has a lot of control on the pacing. Mm-hmm. And because you're using, you know, both sides of your brain in many ways, where in writing, you know, the pacing and the tense is sort of set. In a novel, in television or a movie, you know, you're sort of just a spectator in many ways, and that you're following the characters. In a comic, you can assign certain time lengths within reason. You know, if a comic book takes place in 48 hours, you only have 48 hours to play with. But you can determine if somebody says something in 10 seconds or 30 seconds. And so obviously when you're messing with the pacing, you know, you're limiting how much control, but also it's tricky. So what was that like doing that? Because obviously controlling pacing in comics is a whole different ballgame than any other medium out there.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, Welcome to Everville obviously has the first 26 pages takes place in really almost like 16 hours in reality. I think the first page takes place like 3 weeks before, and then we have 25 pages or so, right? And then 27 takes place four years later. I mean, 25 pages correlate take place ultimately in 16 hours, which is crazy. So what was that like, even just limiting that much pacing? Because it does change the comic in many ways, where it's very anti-comic. Very anti-comic.
Well, so I will say this as a writer, not only as a writer, but as a writer who taught creative writing in high school, and you know, I went to school for this kind of stuff. Pacing, I used to think was something that semi is natural, but I feel like I've always been semi decent at it. But the more I'm getting into this stuff, the more I'm realizing how little tweaks can completely fix pretty much the way that readers read. And a lot of that has to do with the relationship that Matt and I have when going through edits or going through scripts. And I think the last script that I sent him the one last job script to make sure he reads the whole thing. And I made the joke. I was like, hey man, I put some establishing shots in there just for you. Because a lot of writers you never think of establishing shots because you're just like, oh, well, you know, the scene's going to move. If you think of it only as a movie, you might miss some stuff and some nuances that'll help drive the story along. But yeah, so for pacing, it is not something that does come natural, but it's something that can definitely be learned and harnessed. And it's just a matter of playing around with stuff and seeing what feels right, especially if you have an artist that reads your script and actually gives feedback.
Yeah. So Aaron, with Aaron, the first book was with Paradigm. I didn't know better. He didn't know better. And there was things that obviously we would love to go back and change. But for the most part, the story's solid. And that's more important than anything. Like, regardless of those little things, you can get through it. You can read it and get the story and understand what's going on. And that's, you know, for us, that was just a huge deal and an accomplishment in that. With Aaron having that background, you could tell his scripts. After we've made them, we've both learned so much from them that now it's getting easier and we can come to each other. And he's doing everything that I would have done anyway with like, oh, okay, I know to put establishing shots in all these because you do have to do that if you're changing scenes or going to somebody's house. You can't just like show up somewhere and everybody be like, where are we at? You know, it has to have like a little something.
Which, by the way, Marvel and DC break these rules all the time. Yeah. Especially, it's getting worse and worse where it's just like you're outside fighting, then you're inside someone's room.
Yeah. And then, but with Everville, we got more comfortable, and it was one of those things where like I was learning so much about pacing and watching, you know, David Mazzucchelli's stuff on, you know, like how he did, you know, like his little workshops that are on YouTube, and just understanding like action to action stuff and moment to moment pacing and, you know, stuff like that. It's huge information for especially comic book stuff. So, but at this point now, like with Paradigm, like I'll like you said, you get to the point where it's, I've worked with Aaron enough. I know he knows me, and I'm just going to add in a scene because I see it a little different. Like he's not, even though he's got certain like things he wants to see. If I feel like, okay, I might stretch that out. I might add another panel. As long as I can fit it in there and all of his dialogue gets in there and the story keeps going, I'm doing my job, and I get to be a little creative on top of what he's doing, and we can both go back and forth. And I think he knows that I'm not going to completely just be like, yeah, I'm going to completely take this page out because I don't feel like it's worth it. Like there's no, like it's ultimately his story, but I'm trying to put my fun twist on it with the characters and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's coming out. You know, I think Everville was super fun. I can't wait to get to the next one after Paradigm. So
yeah, no. I think that makes a lot of sense. And so one of the things that I think is super interesting also about Catalyst Comic Studios is that you sort of have two tracks in many ways, because Tilt is part of that superhero universe, and Everville is part of the Uprising, and One Last Job is also part of the Uprising. And you're a young company in many ways, and so it's kind of crazy that you have an imprint. And so I'm curious how this imprint came about, because usually companies build imprints, you know, later on when they're going down something. You guys did it very early. And I'm going to take a shot at the dark here and throw some stuff out here and see what sticks to the wall.
I'm ready.
Obviously, when people create imprints, they're creating it either for business reasons, or it's because they have a particular product that doesn't exactly align with their other product, and they want to create a differentiating and have different rules. So for instance, you know, if you have a children's comic company and you want to do an adult book, you might create an imprint for that purpose, because this way those two brands are separate and they don't bleed into each other, and therefore you don't create a concern with your marketing. And so obviously Everville, One Last Job, which we're going to talk about in a minute, are very different than Tilt and Paradigm. And so I don't know if I hit it on the nail there, but I'm curious how that came about and why that was created, because it is something that is a little bit abnormal.
Oh, yeah. Well, we do a lot of things that are abnormal. But yeah, so basically the birth of it came from a discussion that I had with another creator who had a friend, or I guess a friend, somebody that they knew that was wanting to launch their comic book series and kickstart it, but they lived in a different country that has pretty much zero market to be able to effectively put a comic book out. So they'd asked us, as Catalyst, you know, would we be willing to look at possibly taking them under our wing, under the Catalyst banner, and helping them put the book out? And so Matt and I had to sit down and have a discussion, and that opened up the entire breadth of what became the Uprising imprint. And basically the idea is that anything that's not in the self-contained superhero universe would fall under the Uprising imprint. Once we start doing the kids stuff, we will have a kids imprint as well. And it is to keep those in separate houses. And it's to make it a little more consumer friendly, so they kind of know what they're getting when they look at it. So the superhero stuff, that's how we started. So we didn't have to put an imprint on that. But yeah, Uprising is for creator owned. So going forward, when we start helping other publishers put out their books, then you'll see those fall under the Uprising category as well. And that'll be, you know, they're IP owned, but they're just publishing under the Catalyst banner. But it's just a way to keep everything separate. Matt and I do quite a few different things that are under our LLC, but we keep it all kind of compartmentalized. It helps us to know kind of where stuff is in these different sections, because we do other stuff with graphic design, and we've been helping people do their Kickstarter trailers, and that's part of Catalyst Comics Studio, because we are a studio at the end of the day. That doesn't mean we only do comics. So this kind of stuff, voiceovers and all that. So we have that under a different name. We have, you know, the Coffee Run show that we do on YouTube. It has its own name, but it's all under Catalyst Comics Studio.
Mm-hmm.
And so since we're on the topic, we might as well start getting into the Kickstarter. I know it funded pretty quickly. I think it's fully funded and then some in less than a day, which is awesome. That's one last. What?
We will take it.
That's right.
One last job. Okay, one last job before I get interrupted and then start just leaving. It's One Last Job. Obviously, it came out yesterday. It's over $1,000 now. There's 27 days, I would like to say, left. A lot of cool stuff going on. And so basically the basic premise is that there's an FBI, CIA type agent, assassin, spy who says, hey, I'm done. He's sort of had enough. He's having some issues and he realizes it's time to go. Yet I guess he gets one more job to do, and well, it sort of spins out, and maybe the government and some people have other motives of his nature and his skill set, and he's trying to get out, and sometimes things bring you back in. And there's been other books that are like this. Polar is one of those books, and I love Polar to the core.
Well, even like Jack Reacher or John Wick, which is those are things that I love. And then spy stuff as well, like 007. I'm a massive 007 fan. And so the Bourne saga, all of that stuff was stuff that I enjoy. And I've always wanted to tell a kind of spy thriller. And this was just an option for me to do it in my own way. And it's been pretty fun. I like hearing you describe it because that lets me know what you got out of the page. And so you pretty much nailed it.
I saw it from a mile out. I'm not even going to pretend. The second you said the title, I saw it from a mile out.
Yeah.
It's legitimately not that hard to see it from a mile out.
That's good.
It could have gone two directions, though. It could have gone in a Western direction, I will say, and it could have gone spy direction. If you didn't say, giving me like, oh, it's a spy thriller, it could have gone either way. Just saying it that way.
It was important for me to make this as upfront and clear as possible, because as you know, because you've read Everville and you've read Tilt as well, I like twists. And I'll tell you, the entire reason that this book is getting made is just because Matt knows how this issue ends. And he's not even the artist on it, but he knows how it ends. Yeah. And that's why it went to the top of the list of like, we need to get this book out. Yeah. And then I got to sit down and actually go through the storyline with him. And that was fun too, because there would be points where he'd be like, well, you can't do that because of what you did in the first issue. And then I explained it and I was like, what now? But it's going to be a 4-issue miniseries, and it's a lot of fun. I'll say, when I was writing it and I had the idea for Thomas to have a heart condition, it was kind of just a thing at the beginning. And then the more I started getting into the story creating side of it, I realized I could use that mechanic a lot more. So I did. And, Matt's read the whole first script now. And I think it's going to be a really fun, enjoyable, and a lot more brutal and graphic than I probably originally intended kind of book.
And so obviously Matt is not doing the interiors on it. Daniel Gimeno, or I think I got that name right. I'm not good at the last name, so correct me.
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah.
And so he's doing the interiors, and I know that it's in black and white, and so obviously I think that adds to it in many ways. I'm going to go back to Polar, where Polar is a noir book in black and white, done very Sin City-like. And it was actually, Polar, for those who don't know, was actually had words. The original was a webcomic that had no words. And then Victor Santos, who did it, who's an amazing artist and colorist and does a lot of work for DC now, he basically then rebuilt the entire thing. And so black and white is super interesting. And so I'm curious, beyond economics, why you chose black and white, because I don't think money, what was the issue here? For this
no, and everyone says that when we talk about this book. Every single person we've talked to has been like, "Oh yeah, I get it. It's cheaper." And in fact, on our own live stream the other night, somebody said that this book was never intended to be color. Not once were we ever like, "Oh, One Last Job's going to be a full color comic." We always intended it for it to be that gritty black and white style, and And that's why Matt had a huge part in finding the right artist for it.
We had the discussion, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we could color it doesn't mean we should color it. Like these are conversations that we have. Like this, it just feels like a black and white noir. That's kind of how we had it in our heads, and that's how we were like, well, yeah, obviously you could color it. That's not the problem. I mean, like, just find a colorist. But no, it has a mood to it, and we just wanted to keep it that gritty noir spy. Like that's the feeling we wanted out of the book, and we wanted to do something different as well.
It's the beginning scene of every 007 movie, right? It's always black and white, and then it turns to color. and it's the same kind of vibe. You want that noir kind of feel to it.
Yeah, and black and white is complicated though, because good black and white is great.
Yep.
I mean, bad black and white shows up like everything is magnified, and so it is a risk when you do black and white. And obviously, I mean, I think DC Marvel have sort of gotten this idea as well, where we get these big artist deluxe editions in black and white of all these books, and we're actually now starting to see all the crisp lines. And I forgot the X-Men book that's back, I think maybe 80s, I want to say, or 90s. It might be Jim Lee's X-Men stuff he did, where it's the book in black and white reads so differently than the book in color. And Watchmen, for that matter, also reads massively different in black and white than in color. And you actually see a bunch of stuff that you wouldn't normally see if you were reading it in color. And so obviously, what is that like in finding the right artist and finding the right people to do it? Because it is a risk, because everything will show up in black and white. So one small mishap that's major will show up in it. So and it's complicated. So obviously, what is that like, dealing with that, knowing that if it goes wrong, it's going to be bad?
Yeah.
Not saying it will.
Oh no, yeah, like it's, so we're in indie comics. We have, you know, we can't go get super top end artists. That obviously is a money issue. but like in this where we're at, yeah, it's, once we started putting out a few books, it's a lot easier to throw up something and say, hey, we're looking for an artist. And that's probably one of our biggest mistakes, because people don't read. And we'll say, hey, we're looking for a black artist that can do good black, white, and gray wash style, gritty art. And this is the criteria. And then we get people that just send us like the most colorful art we've ever seen. And we're like, I guess they didn't read. But it's just going through it. And you can kind of, after reading the story, Aaron looking at him and me looking at artists going, that'll work. It's just one of those things where you can, you know, with Joe and them, when we did Tilt, it was the same thing. So art's great. And then we saw Ramon's colors and we were like, you know, let's try it together. Let's see what happens. And that turned out amazing, which was awesome. But with Daniel, it's all right there. We can see exactly. So it was a lot easier to say, I like what he's doing. I think it'll translate well. And we just went with him.
But like you said, it is such a big risk doing a black and white book. And that's kind of one of the reasons that our goal is 1,000. Matt and I are very good at penny pinching and knowing how to price stuff. And we kind of went into this knowing what we need and what things have already been, things we're looking to pay for. But, you know, and then the other side of that is we want to get a certain amount ahead of that so that we can, you know, get other projects going and finished and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, Daniel was, I want to say he was in the first. So when I put the post up that we were looking for somebody, I think in the end we had 180 or 190 submissions, which is just insane because a lot of people that live in different time zones just don't even think about it. So they just send you their stuff. So I had to keep shutting my phone off at night because it was just stupid. But I want to say Daniel was in the first 15 or 20 people that sent it. And he immediately rose to the top. In fact, I think he was the first one that I actually sent I sent to Matt through our email for anyone that stuck out to me. Of course, I sent him a bunch of other ones, but Daniel was at the top already. And so when we decided, well, let's, you know, see what we can work out with him, he was ready to go, and we got it figured out and started rolling. And you know, I don't know that Matt in the beginning really thought that this particular style was what we were going to end up getting, but I'm an advocate for it. I think it's such a unique kind of blend of styles to me anyway, as just a consumer. I don't have an art background, but to me it looks like a blend of a few different styles, and I think what he's putting together looks really cool.
So even to jump off of that, because I think this is super interesting, because obviously every indie creator has a different way of finding artists. You know, some people obviously have a bullpen that they pull from at this stage in their fourth, fifth book. Other people throw things out on DeviantArt or ArtStation. Other people, you know people and ask for recommendations. I know that other people do contests to some degree, and that's super interesting in the way that's done, and that's just an awesome way, and I love that idea, and I'm one for that with certain things as well. So where do you even throw out ideas to find artists, and how does that process even work? And obviously, where do you even start? Because there's a lot of places you can pull from. I mean, there's all these Facebook groups that are interesting as well. And obviously, part of the problem, though, is that if you throw out onto Facebook or even ArtStation or somewhere else, it gets a little complicated because people throw out a lot of stuff. I mean, you have 180 positions. You now have to wean out a variety. And let's say that 60 of those actually follow the rules. It's still a lot of submissions to figure out who am I going to go with.
Yeah, I think I'll say don't do it the way that we did it, which is exactly what you just said. We posted it on some of the groups that we're a part of, and you never know, you never realize how many people are interested in getting hired until you post that. But yeah, you pretty much hit the numbers right too. Out of that 180, it was not too many that actually followed the instructions of the post. And not to be a jerk, but if they didn't, they were immediately off the list. And most of them, I didn't even write their name down. Because some of these other ones, I wrote their names down because you never know in the future if we have something. We try to catalog people that we enjoy their work in case we have something in their kind of vein later on. But if you didn't follow the rules to the post, which were very clear and simple, then we already know before even hiring you, we're going to have issues with you, A, following through, but B, actually reading it and doing what the scripts say. And we've established, I don't mind stuff being tweaked and changed. But if you can't even send us a black and white image when we literally said black and white, gray wash, grungy style, and you can't even send one black and white image, I don't even know why you're bothering. But yeah, it was a horrible way to do it. I think going forward, it'll be more recommendation based off of other creators or people that we come across.
Yeah, the other way we do it is a lot of times we just you have those groups and you'll see posts, and me and Aaron will either write people's names down, send them to each other, and say, hey, look at this person. Like, I like their coloring. We should hold on to this person's name if we have something, because like sometimes you'll see people's stuff and you can already think about a project that it would go with well.
Yeah.
Like, if we do a fantasy book, we kind of want a watercolory style with it. It's kind of one of those things, like different, we want to try and see different things and make cool team ups that would go well with the book, and that's one of those things we just we keep our eye out. And that's why I'm definitely not the person to say you should always post your art, because I never do. But you should always post your art, because there are people watching and people like us where we're like, hey, Aaron, check this person's out. Check this girl's coloring out. It's amazing. Like, hold on to that. We might have to find a project for her to work on or him to work on, like we have a couple people like that where we want to work with them. We haven't even talked to them. They don't even know who we are, but we see their work and we're like, yeah, that's really good. Someday.
I'm a big scavenger on ArtStation. I'm a big scavenger on Facebook groups, and I get a lot of indie people on my show because of Facebook and ArtStation, and then very rarely do I get things from recommendations from people. It's the least, and the recommendations I do get are from certain companies that I have relationships because they want their artists on my show, and the people they hire, which I'm happy to do because they're above my pay grade for the most part. And so anytime I get above my pay grade and I get to play in a much higher arena, I'm more than happy to do that, because that's how you get better. But I digress right there. So obviously, Matt, you worked on cover B, and you worked on the mini poster that is for the first day backers. And obviously, Golden is what that's referencing. And I think the variant is GoldenEye too. It's homage to GoldenEye. So where did that idea come from? Because it's definitely done in.
So we've been doing this for a while now. Like, it's just one thing we like to do. But yeah, the GoldenEye was definitely Aaron's idea. Like, he was like, dude, GoldenEye, I already know. We got to do one of that.
Yeah, for
sure. Joe has been doing
variants. I know that.
Yeah, Joe's been doing variants for Tilt. and people are liking those, and having that comic books, having a Galactic in South Carolina, they want what was the last one they did? What was the Punisher?
Yeah. Punisher first appearance.
Yeah, and then Joe did a variant of that, and everybody loved it. I do fine art variants, which is weird for Tilt, but a lot of the main covers, was the Statue of David and as Tilt. Like I find that funny. Da Vinci was number 2, the Vitruvian Man. We did that one for Tilt because it fits that character too. That's the other reason we do them. So it's just one thing that we do. But with the GoldenEye one, Aaron was like, "Dude, I already got it. This is what you need to do." I said, "Okay, I'll knock it out."
So to even go off of that, because variants are interesting and complicated at the same time. Mm-hmm. Obviously, variants can be worth a lot of money with the big guys, depending on what books you buy. And also, a lot of people who are sort of caught in between now on Kickstarter are doing variants. We have people like Elias Chazoudis and Jamie Tyndall and Sun Kumanaki, and then Stan Yak is another good one. Steph Wilson is another good one out there, who are all doing variants as well, who are becoming big. And then we have people like Mike Chrome that do variants. I mean, Sister Mercy is a great example of that. But you have legitly Steph Wilson and Mike Chrome doing comic variants. And both of those people are starting to become massively big. And a few others, I don't know if I could say it, but if I get in trouble for it, but Big Dog Inc., they recruit a lot of cool people to do variants on their Kickstarters. And so obviously, when you're entering this variant game, it's only a matter of time before you hit somebody big. And so what is that position for you guys where you're going with that? Because obviously, at some point, that path is going to have to be crossed.
I think we both know who we want. We've had the discussion if we could have our favorite artist, definitely me and Aaron's right now. If we could get somebody and we could afford them, we would have a Lee Weeks cover to do like a variant. Like that would be like,
then we could die happy.
We could be like, okay, we're good, But like we're also not huge on variants though. Like it's something we have to talk. We don't want 5 to 6 variant covers in a campaign. That's how we can keep our goal low, still make money. Even if I do a variant, even though I'm not, like a well-known, super amazing artist, it's still another option for people to pick. But I'm not taking a cut off of doing a variant cover, like Aaron did the other one. So we even say, yeah,
this is so interesting because variants are complicated. Where I love comic variants, I love cool artists, and I'm an artist like junkie. Where I love a Steph Wilson. Okay, I will spend extra money for a Steph Wilson because I just think it's brilliant the way the guy draws. There are certain people that I just think kill it. And also, it's like I'm a big Sun Kumanaki, I'm a big Elias Chazoudis fan. And so I will pay good money for that. But at the same time, those variants are like $20, $30.
So here's the thing. Let me rebuttal that real quick, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
I want you to be a Catalyst Comics supporter. I want you to see these books and go, I want the Catalyst comic book. I don't want you to buy it. If you want a variant cover from this person, I would just get a commission. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, they're cool. Don't get me wrong, but I want you to want our books. I don't want you to buy the comic book just because we got an artist to do a cool cover and you never look at the book. I want the books to be interesting to where you want to look at it. I would rather you open the book and make that CGC grade go down to 0 because you flip through it and love it so much, as opposed to you just hanging it on the wall and staring at it.
See, this is what's so interesting. So I love art. I love looking at it. Mm-hmm. I also view some of this stuff as investing, and that's my complete background. And so I don't view Kickstarter stuff as necessarily investing. Some of it can be, and some of it tends to do well. But my entire thing is that sometimes some of this stuff, I would never back it. And then I'll read the cover A, but I would never back it. And then all of a sudden my favorite artist is involved. And that's what brings me in. And so it's tricky because it's super complicated But then again, there are people's projects I back because I know them and I like them and I've seen what they've done. And, Cthulhu Invades Oz. I am not a Cthulhu fan. I love The Wizard of Oz. I think that universe is so cool. It's a graphic novel, and I'm looking forward to reading that book. And so obviously it's tricky for me as an individual, but also like that Steph Wilson cover from Bilal, and I know you guys know Chuck.
Yeah.
That cover, I just started laughing, legitimately hysterically. And so every time I see that cover, I'm gonna just laugh my ass off. And I've read Bilal, and I love Bilal. I think Bilal is hilarious. But the whole point is that cover brings and invokes emotion. So for me, that's what it is. And even with the GoldenEye cover, to some degree, it's like, I enjoyed GoldenEye.
Right.
And I remember it. And so that's what kind of says, I'm interested. That catches my eye. And so it's super interesting in this entire thing. But I do think it is a double-edged sword in many ways, where it does increase costs. Because if you want to bring in a big artist, it's this entire thing where you guys are a business. I think that's something that, other Kickstarters are not really an LLC per se. They're not, what I'm going to be doing in the next 2 years with all my stuff on the podcasting and media side. And what I'm doing with my comic book investing class is that I'm a business. I'm not necessarily a podcast anymore. And so obviously that changes the game a lot. In many ways.
Yeah. I mean, it forces you to think about things differently too. We've been operating all this time as a partnership, but we finally went through with it and did our LLC. And that also just opens up a whole new world to you as a small business owner. Different advantages that you may not have had before, and learning all that stuff, and really treating it more like something that you have to build because it's your baby, it's your business. It brings a little bit more weight. And on the variant cover thing, I have so many Nightwing variant covers because I'm a huge Nightwing fan, and if I see a cool Nightwing cover, then I bought it. When it comes to indie stuff, all that stuff is so subjective to me, because the Steph Wilson that you like from Belial, it's just not my taste, and that's fine. One of the biggest things that I've learned is to be okay with not liking everything that everybody else likes. And so you like that, which is great because he has something for you. But it does go back to what Matt's saying. And luckily you've read Belial, so you like the content. But it comes down to, okay, that's cool. You got a cool piece of art. Did you open it? For us, we want people to read it. And, the other parts of the cost thing that you were talking about, you're paying for those variants, but you're also paying to print. Essentially, you're printing another book, because you're not really going to save money when you're printing a certain set with a different cover on it. And we've seen a lot of creators get into a lot of financial issues when they have 6 or 7 variant covers and only a handful of people order each one. That can really screw up all your money.
To talk about another side of the business also, and I've only seen one person do this so well, and that's Jamie Tyndall. I don't know if you saw Miss Meow or Merc Mag. Those stretch goals were insane on that.
Yeah.
For $10, you're getting more stretch goals than anything else. And him, Murphy, and Sean have it down packed tight. They figured out a way how to do it that probably everybody can learn from.
It's so interesting though, because it comes down to what Matt and I were talking about earlier today was for us, $1,000 overnight and over 50 backers. I mean, for a lot of people, that's not super impressive when you look at indie comics today. For us, we were blown away, mostly at the backer count. Because for us to get 50 something overnight, that's huge, because that means 50 people are interested in a number one of a new series that they haven't read before. And when we launch projects, we still just don't know how they're going to go. We don't know how we feel about launching a new story. It's a little different with Tilt. When we're coming around to issue 4, we're wrapping up a story arc. So we feel like we can go a little bit bigger with those amounts and those goals. But this one did take us a little bit by surprise. I even posted earlier, I didn't even have the unlocked thing ready for the 50 backer unlock, which happened earlier today. So when I got home a couple months before we jumped on, I fixed that real quick. And it's just learning as we go. And some of these other guys, you know, they have been doing it a while, and so they can kind of gauge things better than we can. And heck, Matt and I have talked to people that have helped us try to gauge stuff, and man, some of them have missed the mark so hard.
We learned off of Everville too.
Yeah, Everville was another surprise for us. We had no idea that book was going to do what it did.
Yeah, but then with the stretch goals too, like we learned, we did that thing where we're like, one of the stretch goals was an extra book that was specific. Right. You know, that was a whole nother, but we could do that because it was just me and Aaron doing the book. We weren't paying anybody. It was just, hey, if you guys keep doing this, we're going to throw in a whole nother book of black and white with blood splatter on the cover. You know, like that was a, you know, but we lost some money. We didn't lose money, but we lost, you know, we could have done an easier stretch goal, kept more of that money, but we were like, this is awesome. Let's do this. Give everybody that got one 2 books. So they got a 2 books for what, like $10, I think it was. And then all the other stretch goals that came along with it and some extras. So, I mean,
so even to talk about that, because I've seen it done a bunch of different ways. Obviously, Jamie Tyndall, and he's the best. $10 physical rewards get you legitimately everything, and from pins to buttons to magnets to an 11 by 17 print, to bookmarks and to some other cool stuff. All the books signed and whatnot for $10. So that is crazy. But then you also see somebody like Tom Hutchinson from Big Dog Inc. saying that stretch goals don't kick in until $20 backer goals. And so obviously there's some cool stretch goals in there, but you have to meet a certain parameter. And it's super interesting how all this is being done, because a lot of creators, I think, do struggle, because what I think people don't understand, and it could sound shady and it might rub people the wrong way, what I'm about to say, but obviously if you hit $4,000 and your book costs were $2,000 and you and your artist aren't taking anything off the top of the book, and you have that arrangement, and I think that's sort of what's going on a little bit with your Kickstarter, that then funds book 2.
Not this Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So Everville, yeah. But you know, these other projects, Till One Last Job, yeah, those are different because those are, you know, work for hire, colorist for Till.
But anything that comes off anything that is left over gets kicked over into the next book, or gets kicked over into printing more, and then that book gets distributing. And all of a sudden, if you have an extra $1,500, that goes into the next book, or it goes into marketing, or it goes into something that's projecting it forward. And so if you have massive, expensive stretch goals, if you don't have a distributor, which I think Jamie Tyndall does in many ways, where the Kickstarter is the first phase, and then phase 2 is it's going to eventually come into comic shops. And so he can do things a little bit differently with his Kickstarter, from my understanding, because he has more flexibility in that regard. But obviously, I think that's what people don't understand when they're doing stretch goals, and even rewards as well. Where if you have massive rewards that exceed your gain, unless you just want to publish the book and your goal is just to break even, which some people, that's all they want to do. And so, but obviously I don't think that's what you guys want to do. So what is the balance on that? Because that is super complicated. And
well, balance is the exact right word, because all of this stuff is such a so for us looking at stretch goals,
because to even add something, sorry to interrupt, you have to make it so that, hey, I want to be invested, and that your stretch goal gets me enticed a little bit. You guys say you want me to read the book, but like if I'm at the $10 or $20 rank, and then the stretch goal is really cool, you know, that's gonna help me if it's like, oh, an embossed cover or you know, a mini print. Like all of a sudden, I'm now saying, hey, you know what, I could throw an extra $10 in, and I'm a little bit enticed, or I want to share it now a little bit because I want to get us across that goal point.
Right.
So I interrupt.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So, well, one of the things, One Last Job, where we were looking at first day backer goals, I wanted to make sure that we had something stupid, because that reflects just Matt and my playful personality with how we do the business and everything anyway, especially people that listen to our podcasts. Like, no, we joke around all the time. But then there's the serious side too with the mini print. But then when you look at the stretch goals, oh, thanks, Joe. But then when you look at the stretch goals, the biggest question is, okay, we can put it at this amount of money, but what do we actually need to be able to produce that product? Not only produce it, but the other side that people forget is that adds to shipping. So balancing all that stuff people struggle with it. It's difficult. It's not easy. The more Matt and I do this, we adjust every single campaign. After that campaign, we have a meeting. What things worked? What things do we need to adjust?
Did it fit in the Gemini mailer?
Yeah, did it fit in the Gemini mailer?
We're never doing that again.
Did we need, for instance, we've been doing enamel pins for the last couple of campaigns. We're not doing one for this one. In fact, it's not even a upcoming stretch goal that we're looking at. First off, because we just don't think this is a property that we care enough to do an enamel pin for, whether people will disagree with that or not. But there is a cost accrued to making those enamel pins. And then what we did come up with, Matt had the idea to do that 11x17 poster because I didn't know that people would like that cover as much as they do. That wasn't something that I realized when I made that cover one day because I try to motivate myself when I'm working on a new project, and I use a little bit of my graphic design know-how to make something that entices me to get into that world and get into that mindset. And once I shared it and saw that people would like to see that as a cover, it's just something I didn't expect. And so people actually wanting that poster and that 11x17 fold-out poster, it's encouraging. And then after that, the embossed cover is the next thing, because some of these things are goals that Matt and I just want to have. The embossed cover, that's for us. that's just cool. So we're trying to get a little bit about that.
That's the first embossed cover if we get it. We've never
I would also imagine that an embossed cover doesn't add too much on shipping for the most part.
No, it won't. Yeah, it'll be a little bit more to print. A little bit more to print, but at the end of the day, it's an embossed cover, so it's just smooth.
Yep.
With a V. Smooth with a V.
Smooth.
and then obviously, that I think that 11x17 is at $3,000. There's a 3,500, and I'm sure you guys have an idea, but I'm not going to push you too hard on what that is.
It's something that it just enhances the product in a cool way. I think
it will level up the collectability of it for sure.
So it's going to be foiled.
No.
God, Drax.
No, you're not gonna guess it.
Yeah, it was a very it'll be cool though.
I'm not going to push too hard on that, and I do want to talk about the rewards because I think the rewards are super interesting. So obviously there is the regular cover that's $10, which is in line with most indie products out there.
Yeah, but also and there's no shipping on that, so it's $5 for the book and then $5 shipping, but it's all added in.
Then there's also the digital side, which is $3. So if you want to try something, you don't know much about this, and you want to just take that risk, for less than the price of a Frappuccino, you can get this book. It's going to be sent right to your email, which is great. Super cool. Probably relatively when this thing is done, which is, I think, end of May, give or take. So that's going to be cool. Really fast turnaround time, by the way, which I'm noticing, which we're going to talk about in a second when we talk a little more in detail in the Kickstarter world and everything that's going on, because I think that's super cool that it's coming out super quickly. And then furthermore, there's a bunch of, just digital rewards out there. And so obviously I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, because I think there's been a shift where I think 2 years ago, a lot of people were not prioritizing digital. And I think a lot of people were leaving money on the table. Look, I'm a digital reader in many ways. Used to read a lot of digital comics and review them the same day because it was just easier to get it in many ways. And it was also cheaper as well, as like $1 cheaper when you're reviewing 9-10 comics. It starts adding up really efficiently every single week. So obviously, how do you guys feel about digital? Because I think as a consumer, I don't know your product per se, for instance, and I just want to try it for $4. It's much easier for me to get over that hurdle than to buy a $15 book or even a $10 book. It's much easier for me to take that risk, and I get back 6 projects instead of 3.
Yeah. So Matt and I think we sometimes feel like we are of the unpopular opinion where we like pushing digital. You can buy all of our books digital right on our website and just download a PDF of them. Super quick, simple. There's no overhead cost for us. The book's already paid for when we made it. So, we don't have to pay to ship you anything. It's just a clean process. It gets it in your hands immediately. And that's why right now people can get Tilt 1 for free. It's on our website. Just put in your email and we'll just send it to your email. It's a quick turnaround. But digital is, like you said, people were leaving money on the table because the collector in all of us wants that physical product. But what is the consumer consuming? And now with the advent of Kickstarter and analytics on the back end of Kickstarter, you can see exactly what it is that people are buying, purchasing, and backing. And you can see what kind of products they are. You can see their age range. And the younger age range, if that's who you want to start marketing more toward, they're buying mostly digital, an overwhelming percent digital. They'll try it because it's cheaper. And maybe on the next campaign, you'll see them pick up a physical of that one and your current project. That's something that we've noticed. We had people that tried Tilt 1 back when we did the Tilt 2 campaign, but then when we did the Tilt 3 campaign, they would come back and buy all three of them. So it's more of a matter of, first off, you can get this in reviewers' hands. That's how you got all of our books. We sent them all digital to you, and just getting them to reviewers and to consumers in whatever means possible.
It's so much easier for me when people send me books digitally to interview or write or even review. I have a deal with the Press Naval Institute, which is a military graphic novel organization, and a military book organization as a whole sends me all sorts of books digitally. And they said, hey, do you want it physical or digital? And I said, hey, I'll be happy to just have it digitally because I don't want them to send me a book. If they're sending it to me for free to review, I just don't feel too good about it, on that front. But also I get it instantly, and it's so much easier to read on my tablet, on my iPad. Right. I literally can lie in my bed and read it and then review it. I don't have to flip something.
And sometimes you'll back something and you don't like it, and then it's just a quick delete, and it doesn't take up any shelf space. I know this sounds cruel, but I mean, come on, let's be real. Sometimes you do back something cheap, you get digital, you just don't like it. Boom, you're done. You don't have to worry about it in the future. It's gone. But at the end of the day, if you do like it, I know Matt and I are this way as well. If it's something that we really enjoy, then yeah, we'll turn around and buy a physical copy later on, maybe on another campaign. Matt always brings up the vinyl thing. Well, with that coming back so hard, it's the same way. You got bands you love. I do it all the time on Kickstarter now with bands I love. If they put out a vinyl for their upcoming album, then yeah, that's probably the one I'm going to get.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just don't have the money either to buy the physical, right. But you might have the $2-3, or you might have an email address. I think that was one of the things we learned. So when you first start out, right, we didn't want to give them away because we felt like we put so much work into it, so much money. That was the dumbest thing we've ever done.
Yep, I agree.
If you can give away, if getting people invested in that book is the smartest thing you could possibly do. I know even if I gave somebody a physical and I thought that, they're an actual comic book person, I would give them, if I had extra physical, then I'd say, here, just read it. It's on, take it home and read it. If you promise me you'll at least check it out, you can have it. There's a certain point where it's, if I knew them or whatever, and I knew I might be able to get it, just getting that product in their hands to get them invested is, with the email thing we've done, is probably the smartest thing we've done so far.
Oh, dude, if people just look at the engagement on our Instagram, which we've been driving more focus toward lately, if people look at the engagement levels, it is completely shifted since we started giving that away. And even just getting messages now and people saying, when do issue 2 and 3 come out? Oh, well, they're already out. You can just go on our website and grab them. And so we've had people ordering, which is a weird thing for a lot of indie comic creators, to actually have a consistent amount of people ordering books and having to put packages together, which is a fun, cool thing, because that means more people, they read it, they liked it enough to turn around and buy it and whatever else they bought.
So what we're saying is digital, yes. to answer your question. Yes.
I mean, I love email marketing. It's how I'm building my entire business, is predicated on email marketing and then funneling in. And it's brilliant. And ClickFunnels, guys.
It's simple. It's also simple for us to put out one newsletter and just everyone gets the news together. And the other thing for us is anytime. So what I did was for Tilt 1, which is this is the one we're giving away, that's in the welcome email. Like when you sign up, your welcome email gets immediately sent to you. It's in there. But that also means for anyone that stays on our subscriber list, anytime we change that out and put something new, because before that we had a scripting guide. But anytime we switch that out and put something new, they get that too, because I'm going to reissue it to that same group of people.
And I'm sure that if somebody's on your email list and they can't find a free copy of Tilt 1 and they shoot you a message,
absolutely,
you're the type of people that are going to send them a free digital copy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because there's those, well, I mean, especially, I don't know if you use MailChimp, but one of the problems with MailChimp is it goes into people's promotion boxes more often than not if they're using Gmail. And most people don't check that box or just immediately delete whatever is in there. So if people do sign up and then they don't get it, most of the time I assume they message us. Hopefully they do. I mean, if you don't, then you just get it together.
but backing off of digital, because I think email marketing, and I think that's probably your greatest mistake, is that because it would have been so dirt cheap, and your acquisition cost on an email is unbelievable. And I know all about this, in which my business practice is going to be predicated on this come April or May. It's legitimately what you just described on steroids. But I digress there. So let's talk about the physical side. We mentioned obviously cover A, cover B you could pick up. And then there's the Virgin cover. I know that you have retail stuff, which is awesome. And that's something that indie comics do struggle with. That's a problem that hasn't been solved yet. So whoever can solve that problem is going to become very rich very quickly.
It's being worked on.
But what I think is super cool is that you have a spy pen UV pen thing going on, and I'm not exactly sure. I know the components of it. I just don't know how it gets into your book, because obviously it's super cool. And people are sort of doing a lot of cool stuff like with this stuff with QR codes, Easter eggs now in books, and some other cool stuff that's happening. I don't know. I think Baskin, Sam Noor, and Baskin Sully, I want to say, or Sully Baskin, did a they actually did a virtual like stuff in their book. So there's animated scenes once you hold up your phone to certain things and panels. It was animated, which expanded out the book completely. Super cool. And the name's slipping my head. And I actually should have picked up that book and I didn't. Yeah, that's a mistake. But anyhow, a lot of cool stuff. And so this is something that's, I think, attached to this book very nicely.
Yeah, it's just, again, that kind of stuff just comes from Matt and I just wanting to have fun with stuff. So I'm still deciding exactly how I want to do it. I think I will have it to where backers that get the packages with that in it can actually ask to have something specific written in the UV ink. My original plan was to get a UV printed cover where it had a blacklight message underneath everything that people could do. But pricing that, we ain't there yet. Maybe for the trade. But regardless, it was a really cool way that we could get people a little bit more invested and personalize it, and give them another cool little product. So we'll probably have it where people can say what they want me to write, or they can leave it open and let me write something stupid.
Or dirty.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. A couple of people, maybe.
I already know who you would. I already know who you.
They would be. I'll tell you this. They would be surprised getting that from me. For people that know me, they would be surprised by that.
That's why I said it, because I know things that people don't know.
Man, it'd be hilarious.
And then the other thing, and a lot of other comics have done this too, is that you can become part of the book and you can become a spy in issue 2. And so obviously that's cool as well, because that's a very nice personal touch.
That was a hard one to balance because, with Everville, we had people that backed it at that tier where they'll get drawn into issue 2 of Everville. And we did the same thing with the upcoming Tilt 4. People will be getting drawn into that. But with One Last Job, with it being such a different art style, we didn't want to go that route and have that option of people getting drawn in. So we thought, what else could we do that would create value, but that people would like? And so Matt came up with the idea of getting people's names in there, but turning them into code names. And then just to sweeten the pot, I just decided to do stupid writer sketches because for some reason people like those. So, people that get that tier, they can pick a character, and I will honestly try my best to draw that character. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
He'll become Charles Soule, and when he does writer sketches, it's great. It's great. He's the best. He's the best at it. He puts Ryan Brown to shame. I'm just saying.
It's always fun trying to just come up with cool themed rewards that fit the book, that make sense, that would be awesome, that make it collectible. You know what I'm saying? That's the point. I feel like that's the point of Kickstarter. Like, we do want to get away from Kickstarter eventually, but we want to keep Kickstarter for like, hey, let's do a cool bundle of something and do like and that's when we could really like pull out all the stops. This is a super Kickstarter exclusive. You're only going to get this through this campaign. It won't be with regular stuff. We could do all this specific stuff, but we're not at that point yet of doing like really crazy things. But like the shirts and stuff, we're not going to print them and take them to shows. Those will just be whoever gets the Kickstarter. There are certain things that are like that we're not going to keep printing, so.
I know it makes sense because obviously exclusivity to some degree works, and then at certain points it doesn't.
Right.
And it's complicated on Kickstarter because I feel as an individual is that certain things should never ever be exclusive to Kickstarter. Certain variants should never ever be exclusive to Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And I hate when projects do that because I'll come to a show and I just don't have the money to buy a variant at that point, or I don't have the money to buy a cover B, for instance. And then all of a sudden 3 months later I have the money, but then it was exclusive to Kickstarter. But then something like the shirts, I completely get that and I don't disagree. And so I think
shirts take up more space. They're more expensive to ship, and printing them. The cost of printing a T-shirt is substantially more than price per copy. So if you notice, the way we always do ours is those extra covers. They're always limited availability, which typically means about 100, because we're going to print whatever that threshold is that we get a decent discount on the actual print run. So once those are gone, they're gone. And it's the same way we did with that black and white splattered cover of Everville. We had 15 or 20 of those left over because we did a small 100 print run. All the backers got theirs, and then the rest of them we took to a show and sold them for like $15 a pop. And it is what it is. People paid cheaper for it on Kickstarter.
They got it for $10.
Yeah.
$2.
And now let's just dive into Kickstarter. As much as I'd like to talk about Chuck Tino and everything that's going on with him. And obviously, I know Chuck. I was on Chuck's show. Chuck's been on my podcast twice. And Chuck is great. If you don't know who Chuck is, look him up. Look up Chuck Pino. And obviously, when we get to 100 backers, are we at 100 backers yet?
No, we are 53. So when we hit 75, we unlock another one. And then when we hit 100, we unlock 2 books.
And that's Welcome to the Void. So you can get, and everybody gets that. Just saying digital.
Yeah, that's everybody. We've already unlocked one, so everybody is getting a copy of The Pits, which is from Ryan Shemek. And then 75 backers is Sovereign Comics, tier, Cypher Team #1.
Yeah, and he's been on twice, so and he's coming back on eventually. And so it's just a really, really cool universe. Super interesting stuff that he throws out there. But watch those 2 interviews because I need the views, everybody. I need the views. But anyhow, I want to dive.
Subscribe.
Hit the bell.
Hit the bell for notifications.
If you're seeing this on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, please like my page on Facebook. Please like my Twitch. I don't know how to use Twitch. I'm still learning, so bear with me. I'm not the best at it. And definitely I know how to use YouTube. So subscribe as well on YouTube because that's awesome. There's a lot of cool stuff on YouTube. Bunch of cool panels back in the day. You start thinking through my content, you'll see a bunch of stuff that I've done back in the day. Anyhow, it's not about me. It's about this Kickstarter. And now I want to talk about Kickstarter in general because I think you guys have the right idea in many ways where you want to get off Kickstarter. Now, I like Kickstarter. Kickstarter is a funnel. Bunch of cool projects, bunch of traffic is driven to Kickstarter. It's an amazing platform. But I think Kickstarter in the next 3 years is going to have massive problems as bigger studios come in. And I know that, I think I asked Aaron this already about Keanu Reeves and Boom Studios, and let's be realistic, they just did it again with Power Rangers. And I think
they crushed it.
And it's great.
They said it's morphin time, and they took all the money.
I got no problem with Kickstarter necessarily allowing big players on, but we also opened up Pandora's box to some degree. When you look at Keanu Reeves, who did almost $1 million, we've got Scott, who did $300,000. You look at Jeff Lemire, who's killed it. Curse Words did $125,000. You know, and I could keep naming names here. Power Rangers is doing $500,000, if I didn't already say that. And so obviously, I think indie creators are about to experience two things. Either they're going to do really well if they're in the right time at the right place, which means you don't control your destiny, or they're going to get shellacked and destroyed because, again, you don't control your destiny. And so you guys are getting off Kickstarter. And this isn't political, where people, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, that's bullshit, for lack of a better word here. And that's purposely designed for a reason, because there's money in adversity. But I think it's super smart that you guys are getting off Kickstarter. So what prompted that? Because that's something that you've been publicly, I guess, stating it out there. And this is way back, like 6 months ago.
Oh, yeah, it's been a minute. And some people don't like us for that exact reason. People that know me know that I just wrote an article about this, but people that know me know I use the term small press publisher more than I use the term indie comic creator. I am an indie comic creator, but Matt and we are a small press publisher. And when you look at this from a business perspective, everything that you just said is pretty much the same thing. It's the matter of, it's cool that all these new people are coming onto the platform, but how do you get them to look at your stuff when they're only jumping on there to buy Power Rangers? Again, it looks great for the numbers, but is it reflecting in them coming over to your stuff? And a lot of that has to do, because there's no way that you can break that right on Kickstarter, right? You have to funnel ways around Kickstarter to get to those people. If it was better in the sense of Kickstarter's, suggestions and things like that, if you back Power Rangers, maybe there's another book similar to that, rather than them just throwing whatever books are on the bottom of the screen, then maybe it would do something better for indie comic creators. I think the goal, though, has never been for us to make our entire business crowdfunded, because I think that's a bad business model. I think the goal is to be a normal publisher who can put these books out. And I think the more that we see these stuff changing, the more we see everyone getting away from the entire purpose of Kickstarter and Indiegogo. The entire purpose of it is to fund the creation of a product. That is the entire purpose. That's the reason it was founded, the reason it started, the reason most of them were tech projects to begin with, right? But now you have those background conversations, and people really battle with the whole question of, do you need your comic book to be 100% done by the time you go on Kickstarter? I don't believe that. We're not doing it this time. Typically we do, but this time we didn't. And the reason why is because you're doing the Kickstarter to fund the project. That's the point of Kickstarter. We've somehow gotten away from that as a sense of, let's just do this as our business model, and that's how we'll make our money. But then you see people doing $23,000, $24,000, but they miscalculated shipping and print costs, and now they have to jump over to a different platform to try to recoup some of that money as well. Or again, it goes back to balance in all of these things. The more money you make on there, chances are the more money you're spending on creating stuff. So it's just a matter of making all that stuff balance out.
Or with Indiegogo, if you start on Kickstarter, people go to Indiegogo because they have excess, merch, because they order their merch and then they want to double dip. And they didn't truly calculate. They didn't fully understand. They were trying to get a good deal, and then they're making extra money on the side, and they'll sell whatever they want to sell for it on Indiegogo, regardless of their Kickstarter numbers. And we started seeing a lot of this stuff where people over-ordered merch and they're selling it for legitimately half of what they sold it for on Kickstarter.
Yeah, that stuff drives me nuts. So for us, when we do Tilt 4, the plan is to do a Kickstarter and then migrated it to an in demand on Indiegogo. Of course, we're not going to change the pricing. The entire point for us to do that is to hit the market on Indiegogo, because we've never used that market. So it may go horribly over there, but it's not going to matter if we already funded on Kickstarter.
I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say they argue about the big companies coming in, but I mean, I guess to me, I kind of like seeing what they're doing, as in like a market research. Like I don't talk to Boom Studios, but when they drop a campaign, I see what they're doing, how they're doing
it.
But
they like your stuff, Matt.
Well, yeah. But it's one of those.
We see you out there.
But yeah, like I'll look at these big campaigns and see what they're doing, and see what they're marketing, what they're selling. And yes, like Aaron said, listen, Boom Studios, I don't know why everybody's freaking out, because you got to think, yes, they got $663,000 right now for Power Rangers, but they're also shipping you out 6 hardbound books with like a Megazord fold up like display.
Also, let's get real.
You have to think about how much of that money is gone.
Let's get real though, because
it's going to be
they got
a lot.
$663,000. We're not getting $663,000. There's a huge price difference between what we're going to be bringing in by the end of this campaign and what they've made by the end of their campaign. So the whole trying to compare yourself to a major corporation, it like Matt said, it helps to see the things that they're doing, because it kind of puts it a little bit more out in the open where normally you don't see that stuff. And so for market research, it does help. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this whole mentality of like, they're going to take away my backers is just one of the dumbest things. That it's a horrible way for you to look at crowdfunding and your own audience.
It was like, what was the Scott Snyder book that was on there? Nocturnal or something like that. But still, like, you got to think, those were 2 of the biggest writers and artists for DC, and they only made like what, 100 and was it? I can't even remember how much it was.
300,000, give or take.
$300,000. And they probably thought they were going to walk in and make $500,000 easy. They had all this campaign.
They thought they were going to make $1 million.
Yeah, they thought they were going to make $1 million. And that is
that is the most indie way to make a lot of money.
That was
they went into that just like an indie creator, where they're like, "Hey, it's my first campaign. I'm going to crush it."
Yeah, that was almost a Rorschach, "You're in here with me" moment. Like they thought they were going to walk in and own the jail, but it's like, no, this is crowdfunding. This is different.
So this is my question, because both Berserker and Nocturnal, which are the 2 biggest Kickstarters up to this date in the comic realm, from my understanding, are now both available to be ordered. Berserker was, I think, before the Kickstarter, able to be ordered, and now Nocturnal's coming out by Image. And so obviously I think it raises a lot of questions. It raises a lot of questions because Scott in particular, not Keanu Reeves, but Scott said, "Hey, I'm forming my own impress. I'm forming my own comic company where we're going to do both, my stuff that I want to do and other people's stuff that I'm going to oversee. You funded it on Kickstarter, and then now you're releasing it through Image as well." I think it raises a lot of questions on Scott's motives. And I like Scott. I'm not bashing the guy. He's been nice to me in my conversations with him, but I think it raises a lot of questions. Is that how indie are you going on Kickstarter? And I think that's kind of what happened. I think when they do the second issue, I think there's receipts. I think there's going to be receipts for it. And what I mean, and for those who don't know what a receipt is, it's typically a wrestling term where if you cut somebody up by accident, they're going to cut you up at a later date, and they're going to hand you your receipt.
So I think they did do it different on Kickstarter. So what he said on Kickstarter was the Kickstarter version of that book is the script and the pages separately, and the word balloons are not in there. You could read the script, and then you see his artwork, his finished artwork, without any dialogue balloons in there. So that's the Kickstarter version. So when it goes to Image, it would be a full regular trade of everything finished. So you're getting that completely different Kickstarter exclusive. So I get why they're doing that. It's neat, but it's different, but it's not going to be the same
Similar
thing.
to when a lot of indie creators put out the director's cut of our comics, which I've yet to do one. Maybe I'll do it in this campaign and open it up as something later, where basically it lets you see the background of the book and, you know, the script pages and how it all formed and character designs and all that kind of stuff. I know a lot of indie creators that do that. They did that to just a different scale because they're larger.
Right.
But yeah, I do agree. I think the Berserker one's a little bit different to me because it seemed absurd to me that you would order these box sets of the book, but you could pick it up beforehand at a comic book store.
And you're getting don't you order it all, but they're not out? Because I know they said like the second volume comes out the next year, and the year after that you get the third one, but you're paying for them all up front.
Yeah, it's weird.
That was kind of weird. Yeah.
Isn't Mighty Morphin Power Rangers doing that also to some degree?
I didn't even really look into that campaign a whole lot.
They're all, those books are all being released at different times. Those six books.
Yeah, they're probably trying to do the same thing.
Because I don't think that they could produce all 6 books, because also they want to get all 6 books into stores at the same time, and so it's super complicated. But I think Boom is very different than the others. And I think it's going to rub people the wrong way. I really think that to some degree, and I think that it's going to be reflected in the free market because I'm a free market guy. So,
but then if you're a Power Ranger fan till death, you know it doesn't matter. You'll wait.
Well, apparently they did get it. So
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying though. Like if you're a hardcore fan, you'll wait though. You know, like anything.
But I think that's what they're banking on. Is they're shifting to bank only on the hardcore fans and the whole mentality of fear of missing out, and kind of looking back at the regular, normal, just walking into a shop consumer. They're secondary now, which, you know, from a business perspective, I can't say they did it wrong. They made a lot more money than I've ever seen. So
to even talk about that, because obviously COVID has changed the game, and I think this is something that is related to COVID. I think we're going to get here anyway, because if we use Power Rangers as an example, let's say, you know, a small comic shop might order one of these books. Ultimately, in reality, of the Power Rangers books, you know, with Berserk they might order 3 or 4, but you know, with the Power Rangers it's $100, $110 book. You know, they might only order one because they can only sell one of them. And they know it's going to sit around for 3 months, and that one day a Power Ranger fan is going to walk up to, I need this book. Now they've come directly to consumer, and I think with comic shops being shut down, Diamond not functioning for a few months during the middle of 2020, cons not happening, people having more income because they're not spending it on travel, hotels, getting books signed, CGC stuff. You know, I think that we pretty much got here. And so I'm curious how both of you view the business. I know that me and Aaron spoke about it the last time a little bit, but obviously, what do you guys see as changes in the business and even this direct consumer? Because I think Kickstarter to some degree, and even indie comics, small press, and even smaller companies have gotten a hell of a lot bigger during COVID.
Well, you want me to go? You want to
go? Go ahead.
Obviously, we kind of hit on all those notes that we want to do. Obviously, digital. We just want to have options everywhere, right? Why wouldn't you? It'd be kind of dumb to, like, if people don't. You have the people that love going to comic book stores, and we want to have our books there. If the comic book stores will order them from us at a, you know, and they can make money and we can make money and all that kind of stuff. We want people to be able to walk in and get the books. Then you got the people that just want to order offline because they don't like going anywhere. And so we have a website, and we'd want to get off Kickstarter as another one, you know. And then, you know, digital, same thing. I want to try it, but I don't want to pay a lot of money. You know, and maybe I'll, you know, it's like the books off of Amazon, you know. So I mean, the market again, it goes back to we know, even if the market implodes, which we hope it doesn't, but you know, even if it calms down, even if all the hype goes away from the Marvel movies and all that kind of stuff, and comic book stores are what they are, there's always still going to be those hardcore fans that are the vinyl collectors. You know, they're going to go in for nostalgia, or hey, there are companies there's still bands that are brand new that are putting out records. You know, like it's the same thing. We're those nerdy music guys that want a pressed record, you know, of your music. You know, it's the same thing. Like, we're going to keep doing it regardless and try to get it in whoever's hands we can, you know.
I agree. I don't know what to add. I mean, it's the way that we look at stuff is building the fan base, building your audience, and seeing who comes back. And if people don't come back, then if you see growth, then, you know, there's a variety of reasons why maybe they didn't. So far, all we've seen is the growth aspect. We haven't seen many people pick up. Matt and I are really starting to gauge into the philosophy of, if we can get our book into their hands, we pretty much feel strongly that we'll see them again. Maybe not even on that title, maybe on a different title.
Yeah, they might read the book and go, I like the writing, I just don't like the concept. You know, like the writing's solid. Oh, and then they see us later and go, oh, I do like zombie dinosaurs from space. You know, let me check that out. Aaron's writing it. I kind of like how he wrote it, but it wasn't my style, or that book wasn't what I was craving at that time, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, Tilt was the first thing that did that for us. And you don't really realize it until later on, when, you know, you have somebody that staunchly says they don't enjoy superhero books, but they picked it up anyway, and then they actually enjoyed it. And so for us, that's an encouragement to say that we can at least somehow get it into these people's hands, where they can just give it a shot.
Yeah, and I'm going to sort of follow this up. I mean, I think that the future is very much direct to consumer. We're seeing this with AT&T. We're seeing this with Disney. We're seeing this with Netflix. We're seeing this with Amazon. And I don't see how comics are going to be any different, where I think, you know, one of the things that I think is going to happen, and it's going to sound messed up when I say it, is I think we are going to see a bunch of marketers who also write comics versus comic creators who are marketers. And I understand that nobody comes in as a marketer and then writes a comic, but I think that's how it has to be said, because I think marketing is going to be the key.
I think we'll see them try. Anyone that is truly a respecter of, I'm not even saying comics, but storytelling in general. I'll tell you this, if a marketer comes in and they're a great writer, a great storyteller, awesome. I might even pick up their book. I don't care that they're a marketer.
What I mean by this is, I think that's how the skill set has to almost be presented now. Meaning that you could be a comic writer, but you have to put on your marketing hat first. That's how I should have said it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's slightly annoying. It is slightly annoying. It's one of the, so for Matt and I, the reason it's annoying is because when we started all this stuff, we both knew, like, we're not great at the marketing side of everything. Yep. And we still admit that. We have fun building our audience, and we just try things to see what works, and it's worked somewhat. You know, like I said before, we've continuously been growing. We haven't seen a downward spiral, so we haven't screwed it up too bad yet. But we at least recognize and understand that is one of our growing pains that we have to figure out how to do better.
Reason why I say this is that everybody knows Grumpy Cat, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody know who's behind Grumpy Cat?
Nope.
It's one of the guys from this like boy band that like, I think almost like Little Ricky, I think is like the boy band or something to that effect. Basically branded and created Grumpy Cat. Grumpy Cat comics are a spin-off of that entire thing and that branding. The whole thing is that Grumpy Cat was nothing special. It's the fact that Grumpy Cat was branded the right way. And so there are people on Facebook, and I haven't chimed in, but I've had private conversations with people, and I'm willing to take the bet that I could produce an average comic and market it correctly and make millions of dollars off of it if it was marketed the correct way. And I mean, I threw up a joke a while ago saying, hey, I'm going to go create a comic of, a guy in his tank fighting zombies and he has half a tank of gas all done in crayon. And I bet you I can market that and make $500,000 off of it very, very effectively. Because if I put on that hat first, and it could be a nightmare. The whole point of the joke was that I'm going to draw something in a crayon and then I'm messing around when I made this statement. But the thought stirs in my head. So this is what I mean, where I think marketing is going to be the key to indie comics and small press moving forward. I think COVID's proven that. I think it's with everything in general, is that whoever is the best marketer, doesn't matter what the product is, because it only matters if you're interested in a second round. And even then, if you just market the correct way again, I think that's where it's going. And so, I mean, it's not a negative thing. It's a very cynical and very negative view on comics. And I'm in the minority. People are going to hate me when I say it that way.
Well, no, it's the same thing as pop music. You know, what gets fed to you is what sells the best, because all you do is hear it all the time, and you're told that this is what you want to hear because it's on the radio and it's popular. And is it popular, or is it just that it's constantly playing over and over again and stuck in your head, and you're told you like it? You know, it's all about marketing. That's how they run the world.
That back, because it applies to comics and it applies to music and really any creative genre. Is at the end of the day, as creator, doesn't that cheapen it? If you're just throwing something for marketing purposes, I think it cheapens the craft itself. If it's great, if it's marketed and you make a bunch of money, cool. But at the end of the day, is it good? So for me, that's what I look for, whether it's marketed good or not. Because I'm sure one of the things we say on the podcast a lot is I can't even imagine how many great comic books never made it past their first issue because they just sucked at marketing. I know a person right now that's on Kickstarter whose book is really, really good, and they're doing their 3rd and 4th issue Kickstarter right now, and it's going awful. But it comes down to being able to market correctly. And like I said, we're not experts, but we at least put the foot forward and try to figure it out.
Yeah, and I'm going to be going down that journey May, April. That's what it's looking like for me on a whole different topic. So I'm starting to figure it out, and it's a complicated road, and anybody who says otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about.
So you're doing a Kickstarter? Is that what you're saying?
I'm building out a class, almost a mastermind.
Oh yeah, you told me about that.
Oh,
before.
okay.
I'll talk off the air because I don't want to.
No, okay, got you. I mean,
but it follows very similar principles.
Gotcha.
Right. Having said all that, and we've been talking for a while now, I do want to give an opportunity to promote both of you. Obviously, promote One Last Job, promote Catalyst Comic Studios. We didn't get to half of what I wanted to talk about. We covered a lot of stuff. There's a whole section of Catalyst that we didn't even get to talk about, from the podcast to video stuff to voiceover stuff to other things you guys do. And obviously, that's probably going to be episode 3 for both of you. So it's just it's going to require a little more research, but obviously both of you hopefully will come back on, and because I would love to do a round 3. And but in the meanwhile, definitely tell people where they can find the Kickstarter, find Catalyst Comic Studios, where they can put their email to receive Tilt 1, and anything else that's relevant, where they can follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and things like that.
Okay. All right.
Get a big breath in here.
I'm just trying to think of how to lay this out in the most. Let's start with Kickstarter. So One Last Job, black and white spy thriller. We've already talked about it, but go look it up on Kickstarter. The link is in our bio on our Instagram, which is at Catalyst Comic Studio. It's also on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Catalyst Comic Studio. Our Twitter is twitter.com. Our handle is Catalyst Comics. It's IX instead of the CS at the end. I'm sure we've posted it on there, whatever. But make sure you go check out the campaign. There's a lot of cool stuff for everybody, especially if you know people that are into spy thrillers. Yeah, and Joe put the link right in the comments, so you guys can click on all that if you're on Facebook. So there's that. There's the podcast, Beards and Comics Podcast. So if you're into what it's like on the other side, being an indie comic creator, we do a lot of interviews with other creators, and we have a lot of fun doing that. And we kind of let you guys see what it's like for us as a small press publisher, trying to figure our way through the crazy world. You can find that anywhere you get your podcast. That's Beards and Comics Podcast. We have a Buy Me a Coffee page now, which is buymeacoffee.com/beardsandcomics. That's just a quick, simple, smooth way if you want to support the podcast. So if you listen to it and you get something out of it and you really like it and you're just like, you know what, I got $5. Let me throw these guys $5. That's the website for that. There's also a membership and all that stuff, but whatever. Aside from that, there's detective clothing and design is the name of it. That's where we do all of our t-shirt design and our graphic design. And technically our voiceover stuff is under that as well. So if you guys need help with trailers for Kickstarters and you want motion and original music, voiceover work, hit us up. We'll work on it. And we're pretty open to that. I think that's all the major stuff. Sounds right.
Sounds right. Just go to Catalyst Comics Studio. Check out the website.
Oh, the coffee run. The coffee run episodes come out first and third Fridays on our YouTube. We're trying to grow our YouTube finally, but people have been digging those, so make sure you check those out.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up, but I've been saying it all along, where you have to support indie. Obviously, support the Kickstarter. It's right up in the comments. Click it. It'll bring you. You got 27 days to do it. So $10 gets you a physical copy, $3 digital. It's pretty low, pretty reasonable. No amount is too small. And if you're in a situation, and I've been saying it with everybody, that you're taking care of your family, making sure your four walls are staying intact, making sure you got food, water, shelter, electricity, internet, and you're concerned about where things are going. Obviously COVID is a very scary time for everybody. Please take care of yourself first and foremost. Because taking care of yourself is ultra important, and make sure you're healthy, safe, and everything above in that category. And if that's the case, there's a variety of ways you can support by following on social media, obviously Twitter, Facebook page, checking out the Kickstarter, just sharing the Kickstarter, obviously checking out the Instagram, checking out the website, signing up for the email, see if you actually like Tilt. All you got to do is plug in your email. Super important.
Mention that. Dang.
Sign up, email stuff. And obviously, as I stated before, sharing it also super important. And look, comment, all that stuff means a lot to people. It really helps, keeps people motivated. Also, it changes and affects Facebook's algorithm. Obviously, you could subscribe on YouTube as well, and just be aware of it is all I'm saying, because it's super important. And if you're in an economic situation where you can't afford to pay, as I stated before, following on social media is free. And at this stage, you have to do it. And if you do back the project, you should still follow on social media, because it is super important regardless of whether you're backing economically or not. And again, digital, $3. You might say, oh, I can only afford $3. No amount is too small. Been saying it, so please support one way or the other. Do both if you can, but definitely at a minimum, follow on one of those social media platforms. It does make the biggest difference. So I think that's a wrap on my end, and I'm going to give one of you or both of you the final word.
Matt, final word.
Read outside the box. Do better, be better. All the Catalyst Comics tags.